Welcome to Base Camp Wisdom, a podcast with people who've weathered the storms, traveled the hard miles, and made it to the other side. In this podcast, we're going to explore life lessons, valuable insights, proven tools, and experiences that will help guide you on your own leadership journey. So grab your cup of coffee, sit back and listen to the seasoned Sherpas who've not just weathered the storms, but they've made it to the other side. Welcome to Base Camp Wisdom. Hey, Todd here. Next episode of Base Camp Wisdom. I'm here with Doug Boneparth from Boneparth Wealth, and excited to have a face-to-face conversation. We've never actually met, but we've chatted back and forth on the phone and some other stuff, more to do with coffee. But man, I'm excited to have you on here today.
Oh, Todd, I've been looking forward to this all week, and it's only Tuesday, so great to be here. Happy to chat with you.
Yeah. What coffee are you drinking today?
I eat like water with potassium and sodium and things. I do a terrible job of hydrating myself, and I think it's responsible for probably a lot of the way that I feel when I'm feeling bad. I just don't like trying to find some healthy thing to add into water. So
I've got this, but
I'm telling you, like the amount of water you're supposed to be drinking, every day is an obscene amount of water. And for someone who literally, for some odd reason, I just do not like chugging water. So hopefully putting some hydrating stuff in it that's healthy will help out here. So far,
we'll balance it out.
It really hasn't. But yeah, we could go on for coffee. We could talk about that for days.
Well, your eyes aren't twitching, so I don't guess you've had too much yet. So
not yet.
What is your favorite coffee that you're drinking right now, though?
Ooh.
And what's your favorite method?
Sure. I just got, shout out to Fellow who does a drops program.
Mm-hmm.
And I just got, so they partner with roasters all over, and through your phone every Tuesday, you'll get the ability to check out what the drop is.
I'm on there too.
Yeah. Just hit how many bags you want, and they'll send it right to you. It's pretty clever. They just did a collab with Counterculture, which is a roaster I really appreciate out of Durham, North Carolina. And they have it's the bags upstairs. I was just reading that. So I haven't tried it yet. I'm excited to do it. Otherwise, I got something out of Rwanda that I had this morning. I always enjoy some of those micro lots.
And South America, East Asia, Africa, what's your favorite region?
My favorite would have to be, I like floral type stuff. So very light roasted floral out of Africa is typically where I think I'll find that. The subscription I have has sent some beans from India lately, which I don't see. Yeah, which I don't see too often. I even had, I think last year, something from China, which was even more exotic. It's the second time in my life I've had a cup of coffee or coffee from China. But usually it's Latin America or Africa is the alternating locations of coffee.
Well, I just got my Aiden for Christmas and then subscribed to trade and just had a bag of Honduran from Kuma that I just finished up this morning.
So
and
good.
Love putting that on the single setting on the Aiden and do my automated pour over.
That was that was my 40th birthday gift from my neighbor who is also obsessed with coffee. We both got Aidens here, and
you got good neighbors. I wish I lived by you.
I got a good friend there. I got to reciprocate, but I'll tell you what, I'm very impressed by that machine. It's obviously replicating a pour over, even in the batch brew setting. I love that those drops kind of poured in there. So you can see what they're doing. They're creating their own little ecosystem around there, and you could get lost for days in creating your brew profile. The sad part about it, I love it. I truly do. It's taken a lot of time out of my mornings, but the downside is I don't remember the last time I've actually taken my Chemex and made a pour over, which was literally a daily ritual for a countless number of years.
I'm in my office, and I've got one in my office here.
So
I have to come up here and do it.
On Saturday morning when I had the time, I looked over at the Chemex and I was just like, oh man, and then I had this really scary moment of, do I remember how to do it? Like the practice of the pour over, like
what's the ratio of the parameters?
Yeah, the timing of my pours. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe we're faltering on this literally daily ritual, something that, pun intended, had kept me grounded for many, many years.
Yeah. Well, I think that's how you and I got connected. I had someone that said, hey, you got to follow this guy. He doesn't just talk about stonks. He talks about coffee and everything else. And that's how I actually found you on Twitter. But one thing I did notice just in all those conversations, I've noticed just a sense of you being very intentional. You're in wealth management. Tell me a little bit your background, how you landed there.
I was immersed into it. Yeah, I was pushed into it. No, grew up the son of a certified financial planner.
Okay.
And got a very early start in the profession. Had a lot of fun in my first year at college down in Florida. And I think I came home that first summer and my dad was like, all right, what are we actually doing here to get you some skills in this world? And I said, I just want to go back to school and have more fun. He said, well, why don't you see if you can pass a general securities exam and get your securities license. Obviously, he had plotted out some kind of course, for me to go down. And I passed. Yeah, I passed my Series 7 that summer, and by the following summer was fully licensed. And by 19, I was, getting a very early and up close and personal look into how to run a financial advisory practice and be a financial advisor. So that obviously has served me well. I ended up not working with my father long term. So after graduating, fled to New York City to be with my now wife, then girlfriend, Heather, who is in law school, and really was tasked with figuring out how to start a wealth management practice of my own. Long story short, I figured that my generation, now geriatric millennial here, was very much underserved by the industry, right? We had no assets post-recession. Why would you want to bring in a 20-something-year-old client if you were an advisor? And I thought that was very short-sighted. I thought this was a wonderful opportunity to grow with my peers so I could provide relatable advice, because I had that early start and I knew what to look for. And that was a first mover advantage. So I created a firm around my generation. And, I'm 40 now, not in my mid to late 20s. It's been a long time. There's been a lot of growth. Millennials are not, those 20-something-year-olds trapped in their parents' basement surrounded by their participation trophies. We have multiple kids, we have mortgages, we have mid-career goals and big goals, of our own. So it's been really nice to play that long game, get it right, and it turned into be a wonderful opportunity to continue growing a practice around that demographic.
It just makes you think about the parable or the adage, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago or today. Obviously, the return on investment you're going to get for someone in their 20s is a lot different from me at 57. It's a different strategy. I'm in a different phase of life.
Experience matters. That wisdom that you pass down allows younger generations to look around corners and avoid mistakes that maybe you learned from in hopes that they would avoid them as well. The expression you just used there, we use in investing all the time, right? Mm-hmm. We just replaced what you said with the word investing. When's the best time to, begin investing, whether that's in yourself or in the capital markets? And it's yesterday, and the second best time is today. And I hear this all the time, right? Like, man, I wish I started doing X sooner. And the case of what I do for a living is I wish I did planning sooner or invested sooner or something with your financial life. And, that does really nothing except, I think, create shame. And the reality is, it's what can you do today and what can you do right now? It's never too late to work on yourself, whether that's, your financial situation, your health, your marriage, relationships with the people you love. And I think that's very important to remember, regardless of what demographic you're serving and how much time you have on your side.
Well, you probably you've got a playbook or a formula you use in wealth management. How do you take those same points and how do you relate that to your personal life and your own personal growth and your professional?
Yeah. There's a really good crossover there. All the things in life that you file under self-care, right? And we just mentioned some of them, whether that's your finances, your health, and your relationships. They all have a common denominator, and that is consistency and discipline, right? You put in the reps. No one goes to the gym one time and says, I'm in the best shape of my life, unless you've never been to the gym and literally, that very well be the best shape you've ever been.
And no one goes to the gym for you either.
Yeah. You can't, buy a machine to work out for you. You can buy a machine to work out on, but not one that will do the work for you. And this is true of all these things I've mentioned. You got to put in the reps. And a lot of times they're very boring things, certainly in the financial or personal financial space. If we're talking specifically about investing, you quietly compound. I'll take a step back. Human beings, by our very nature, I believe, are not good at doing very boring, doing very boring things consistently over very long periods of time. If I told you, hey, you need to put X dollars into a portfolio or into an investment, right? Every month on the 15th, place that trade, regardless of what's going, assuming you can afford to do so, right? Place that trade and do this every month for the next 10 years. So that's 120 months in a row of this very boring activity. You know what? You're probably going to win, quote unquote, win the game of investing, right? You only need to be in the top 50% every single time, 10 times to find yourself in the top, decile, the top 10%. That's how the math works out. So being average consistently actually leads to excellence.
And I'll say that again. That was good.
Yeah. Being average consistently leads to long-term excellence, right? Because you're able to do something that most people would have either have given up on or got too cute with, if we're talking investments. But it's probably even more straightforward when we think about our health, whether that's eating right or exercising. You got to show up, you got to do the thing. You work out. Yeah, I can almost make you a guarantee that if you exercise hard 4 to 5 days a week for 6 months straight, you probably will be in the best shape of your life, right? Assuming you still get the diet part right and you're treating your body right on the nutrition side, you're going to look back at 6 months and actually say, look what I've accomplished here. And some things take even longer time. So we're not good at this. We're not good at this. So anything you can do to move the odds in your favor of doing that is going to be things that ultimately help you compound, whether that's returns in your portfolio or the gains you receive in your physical body, or even definitely don't forget mental health as well.
Well, I think earlier years, I trained for half marathons and did a number of them, but then I quit. I like what you said. I mean, do the little thing consistent over time, just like James Clear in Atomic Habits. If I keep stacking those little bitty wins, I don't have to spend the big money to sign up for the race and get the t-shirt and the medal. What if I just did the consistent thing time after time after time? And that's where the definition of character is, doing those when no one else is looking. It's not flashy, but you look up over a decade and you see that and you're going, oh, wow, I've really got something to show for that. And the consistency has been the reward, or the reward has been the consistency.
Yeah. 100%.
Is there anything that, you take that in your own personal life that you can apply that not to profession and stock or financial management, but just your own personal life? It may be mental health, it may be family relationships, it may be marriage.
Yeah, I'll focus on mental health because I think it's super important. I'm a big believer in maintaining your mental health. I think therapy can be very helpful. I think it'd be something as little as committing to going on a walk every day, either by yourself or with someone you love, like your spouse or partner, all the way over to getting treatment, right? Going just to talk to somebody. I've used that to my advantage. And usually when things in my life get hectic, and that could be very good things, or things are getting a little too wild and there's nervous energy or there's a risk that you need to deal with, I've always leaned on creating a space for me to examine and deal with and cope with those feelings, which always go back to your childhood or some kind of experience you had, traumatic or not, from your past, that you need to tackle and unravel and understand. This process is never short term. And where I'm in my life now is probably the most consistent I've been in working on mental health. I would even share with you that the last few years, 2023 and 2024, were particularly challenging for a lot of personal reasons, interpersonal, family relationships, business growth, and things we needed to do. My wife started to work with me, and that's a beautiful thing, but that's a complete mind shift. Yeah, it's a whole new set of challenges, and I wanted to make sure that I was in the right space to be able to welcome those challenges, because I thought that what we could do together would not only be beneficial to our family and our bottom line, but I thought it was just a whole new dynamic in which to explore our relationship and love one another. We both knew, and I knew from the jump, that this would not be easy to do. It had nothing to do with how long we've been together, 20 years plus, married for 11. This was going to be exercising a completely different muscle. So you put support systems in place. If you can get good at this, you can predict or at least anticipate when you're going to need stuff like this before it happens. So you don't find yourself in a whole load of trouble and reacting to the situation or getting on top of each other. So that's definitely an area in my personal life where consistency has made all the difference. And again, in an area that I believe is very important. And I'm benefiting from that today. 2+ years of that kind of work to come into 2025, despite, still being drained from raising kids during a pandemic and, the good stuff is, look, everything grew, right? I'm not going to cry in my beer over the fact that I'm, better off financially today than I was before we were thrusted into this psychological experiment that we lived from 2020 through 2023 or for wherever you want to say it ended. I mean, we could argue it hasn't ended. We're still kind of unpacking it. So there you have it. I mean, that is a wonderful example of how consistency can bring about great results. But don't kid yourself in thinking that it's light work. It is.
No, it's heavy work.
I think it's the hardest work, quite frankly.
Yeah. Well, you're in the 40s. I didn't do that. And so one, I want to commend you in your 40s to have the awareness and make the commitment of being consistent and having that financial model, even having a father that even showed you a roadmap and had some intention there. Because part of my story in 2016, I complete burnout, ended up in the floor. At the time, my youngest daughter was 8. I was heading to a board meeting that night for a nonprofit, and I never made it to the board meeting because I was in the floor in the fetal position, wrapped up in my daughter's Hello Kitty blanket, and that wasn't a metaphor.
Yeah,
I was literally wrapped up in the Hello Kitty blanket and taken to the emergency room. Thought I was dying of a heart attack.
Not good. Yeah.
No. And I wasn't doing the things that you're talking about in your 40s. Been practicing those. I had a master's in counseling. I had the head knowledge, but the application piece and not talking about investing in myself. I was investing in everybody else, but I wasn't doing that same thing for myself.
Right.
So, I mean, I've never felt bad when I've come in from a walk.
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah. I post online the other day. It was a brain scan of someone before they went on a walk and a brain scan after they walk, and the brain just was kind of lit up post walk. I mean, there's obviously a ton of scientific evidence to demonstrate that simply getting outside and touching grass can work absolute wonders for yourself. It's truthfully one of the things I hate the most about winter time. I'm a South Floridian, as far as
in New York and in the winter.
I've been here forever, but I was just telling Heather the other day, like, what you don't get in the winter, certainly on the weekends when you're shuffling your kids around, it's all the little in between things.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The ability to roll down your window if you're driving your kid to their play date, or simply chatting outside with that parent for 15 minutes while your kid goes off to play with their friends. You can literally just enjoy hitting some vitamin D and having a conversation. Now you're just like either trapped in their house having that conversation, or you kick your kid out of the car, say, have a great one, and you go right back home and, kind of hunker down inside. I don't think there's enough vitamin D supplement I can take to like really recreate what you get from not just, hitting some sun rays, but these small little social interactions, the walk from your car to the store, a little coffee date with your spouse because you're in a walkable town. Yeah. All of those things, we talked about quietly compounding, these things also quietly compound in your life. And when that's removed, certainly over a 4-month period of time, man, it can drive you crazy. So,
but you teed up my next question for you, though, on the long term. What's the benefit of, you mentioned little bitty things. It's, going for a walk, holding your wife's hand, having the window down, going for a cup of coffee. That's not a big trip to Disney. The big things that are the big to-dos, they're great, but sometimes those little things are what moves the needle. And that's what they remember is time with dad or our wife having time with us, and we're not on our phone or checking the news or sports or whatever.
Yeah, it's a little negative, but I'll start with it and I'll turn it completely positive. I have these moments. I got young children, and Todd, you've been in my shoes, times two.
You feel like it's forever, but it goes quick.
It goes fast. You've been in my shoes times two. It's those. I try and tell myself things. I forget where I heard it. And I know in 10 years from now, I will be begging for a child to be next to me, annoying me about something absolutely trivial. Hey dad, hey dad, hey dad. While I'm, trying to do something, I will absolutely beg for that experience or that thing again. I know that. And even in intellectually understanding that, the difficulty of being in that moment, taking that breath and creating the space to appreciate it. And I find myself like, even this morning, I don't know, my older daughter, we play these games I love walking my children to school. It's my favorite part of the day. We play a game, it's called categories, and they just have to name as many things in a particular category as possible. It's fun. Hazel, my older one, is giving her sister Ruby all the answers. And, I had asked her maybe 4 times, stop answering the questions for your sister. But eventually got, you could tell she was then upset that I had to tell her that for the 8th time, but it was the 8th time. Anyways, they recover very quickly. You get them to school, and then then I'm walking home for my Zen moment, and you kick yourself, right? You kick yourself like, man, like, did I need to be that hard? Why couldn't I just let that roll off my back and, let the kids be the kids? They're, 6 and 9. That's what sisters are going to do. It was actually kind of cute. I was the one that was annoyed. So yeah, it's stuff
Didn't bother
like
them
that.
a bit, did it?
No, yeah, they go right into their day. Ruby right off the bus to kindergarten, Hazel right into 3rd grade. At her school, and they're happy as can be. She's chatting with her friend. Ruby's playing with some keychain and her buddy on the bus or whatever it may be. And here you are, as an adult, kicking yourself and shaming yourself and guilting yourself. I guess it shows you really care and you really think about these things. But man, I guess what I do is appreciate that this stuff is hard, right? And I try not to feel too bad about, what happened there, knowing that there are small and trivial things. I also push back on it and realize I got to walk them to school this,
Yeah,
right?
that's the journey. Yeah, you
You
get to
said
enjoy it.
there was a video of Jeff Daniels I saw, the actor, the other day, and he was being asked a question about, how his kids grew up to be such, I guess he raised some great kids. And the interviewer asked him, and he goes, and he reflected upon all the hockey games he would drive his kids to. And he said, it has nothing to do with the hockey game. We almost would never talk about how they played or who scored what goal or anything. It had everything to do with the 2.5-hour car ride to and from the hockey game or the tournament or whatever they were doing. That's the part. So
The journey is the destination there, right? It's that time in the car that you get.
So easy to say, very difficult to implement and practice. And you try and give yourself some grace and know that in the big picture, you're getting it right. And maybe you don't get it right in these small little moments, but you try.
But you said grace, and man, we extend grace to ourselves. You're a 40-something in wealth management. At 40 now, how would you define success, and what would be the parameters or the indicators for success in your?
I think it's about time. It's all about time, right? If I'm able to spend my time in ways that matter most to me, right? I think we have already dealt with this world of the hustle mentality. I think working hard is very important. I mean, I'm busting my butt, harder than ever before. I could tell you that running a growing business, writing a book with your spouse, and raising 2 girls, and this world in this crazy world we live in, feels like 3 to 4 different jobs at any given time.
It was like a climb at a 45-degree incline.
Yeah, you do it because if you're lucky to love, all of the things that I've mentioned, you're in a good spot. But I vowed never to get so engrossed in what I'm building and what I'm doing that I wouldn't be there for my kids. For all the, for however interesting my relationship has become with my own parents, and that's 5 podcasts worth of content. One thing I can tell you is they showed up. They were at my games. They would drop me off at school. They were involved in my life. And I take that very seriously. So I think my definition of success comes down to, am I able to successfully balance, my time and my work? And that's something that just doesn't happen to you. I think Heather saw on the wall of a spa once, like balance is something that you create for yourself. So you have to engineer, you have to have that level of, awareness and that level of self-responsibility to figure out what the word balance means to you. I think we throw it around a lot. Just find work-life balance. Well, for me, that's a very different thing for me.
You and me is very, very different.
Yeah. So time, and I think about, maybe I'm biased because when we think about the largest and most typical financial goal that people have, it's how to achieve financial independence. It's a much better way of saying retirement these days. That essentially is you work this hard to basically purchase your time back, so you have control and have freedom to spend your time how you want. So if I'm getting to choose how I spend my time, I think I'm being successful.
Yeah. I'll ask a little more nuanced question along those same lines, and it goes with success. How would you measure and describe peace? And is that part of the equation with success?
That one's even harder because for me, peace is knowing that the people I care for are happy and healthy and fulfilled. So I think really just the happiness portion probably takes care of all of that. And what makes that so hard is that, I'm a fixer. I always want to fix, things. And I've learned, probably more recently than earlier in my life that I can't fix everyone. I can't fix everything, whether that's my own, relationships with my family members or with friends or clients that I serve. When you're a fixer and you want to fix and you can't, it's another trigger of shame, or you convince yourself that you're not good enough.
Or at best, you're frustrated. And
yeah.
At worst, it's shame and guilt.
So more to the point of why this is difficult is because it's very challenging to get all the people in your life at any singular point in time to be happy. I'll settle just for my daughters and my wife. Like if all three of them are having fun and are in the moment, and, this comes around and, a lot of times, but you see it a lot in the family vacations when you're doing so. Like we went to Universal Studios, at the end of last year, and we just had a blast. We had a blast. Everyone left whatever was bothering them at home. Everyone was in the zone. We even had friends from our town there. We got to be with people we like to be around and do all kinds of fun things. Everyone's smiling. Heather and I are going on the roller coasters just as the kids are. And, again, you don't need to spend a ton of money and go on a great family vacation. It's just a really easy example to use.
But you've invested time. You've invested time in every one of those people.
Peace. That brings me a lot of peace. And look, again, very hard to get everyone happy all at the same time. But, can they at least be safe, healthy? The winter, that's hard. One kid's got a cold, the next one's getting So this is the balancing, right? So the better you are at finding and defining what balance is to you, I think not only can you find success in your life and what you do, but also peace.
As you're saying that, it makes me think, as men and husbands and fathers, I guess I always have to remind myself as it relates to my family, am I being a thermometer or a thermostat? Another way to say that is, am I being intentional or accidental? We have an opportunity to do that. And I think one of the things that really challenged my thinking, a friend of mine, Jeremy Kubicek, we were talking about peace, and he says, Todd, you don't have to let someone else's lack of peace determine your level of peace. And for the longest time, as a people pleaser, and I'm a connector and creative and very driven, I wanted everyone to get along and sing Kumbaya and hold hands around the campfire. And that's not always a realistic expectation, which means I was often frustrated. But in your conversation, I mean, there's things that we can't control, but there are things that we do have control. And if we will spend our time take an inventory, what are the things that I can't control, and spend more effort on that instead of my free-floating anxiety that, you can't control the markets, you can't control the interest rates, you can't control a lot of things, but I can't control how I choose to respond, how I react, my mental, emotional, spiritual health, just like you talked about. For a guy in your 40s now, is there one thing that you would share with a guy just starting out in his career in the late 20s, early 30s, that there's a little nugget that, man, I wish I would have known this as I got started?
Yeah, yeah, I like this one the most. It's learn to play long games, right? Figure out a way to identify goals that you want for yourself that don't happen overnight, that take significant amounts of time, and figure out how to get there. I think for someone who grew up being a very impatient, and I guess the word we use today is social anxiety. I cared a
Huh?
lot about what people thought of me
Yeah.
for a whole host of reasons, but
Right.
at
Understand.
some one way or the other, when I had the epiphany to start a firm that was going to focus on my demographic and the millennials, that is, and I saw nobody was doing it, I viewed that as a challenge. I thought about what it would take, and inherently, I would have to get us from where we were then, 20 something, 27 to where I am now, that's a lot of time. That was a decade plus game to play. You have this idea, you think it's viable, and you got to then try and make this happen over the next 10 years. I think most people in this immediate gratification world and always wanting things now. I mean, the noise is so high. You can pick up your phone and order something on Amazon, and it literally will come to your door today. Not like the whole 2-day thing's gone now. You
Now
can
it's
get it
today.
8-day. Like I see this in my kids. They're like, oh, something breaks. Oh, you can just get another one tomorrow on Amazon. I'm like, man, that is so different from when we were kids. Like you weren't getting that thing for another 14 days or longer or at all. So for me, it's figuring out how to play long games because the long games offer the biggest rewards. Yeah, 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 yeah. It's just again, I guess that wraps up into delayed gratification versus immediate gratification. All those are the same themes here, but yeah, when it comes to business and life and growth, if your expectation is you're going to receive the payoff really quickly, it usually means you're disillusioned or set very bad expectations for yourself, or you're about to take on a tremendous amount of risk. Well, unfortunately, those odds are stacked against you
Yeah,
significantly.
absolutely. Well, it's fun for me to just in our quick conversation here, hear you talking about things that you're already doing with your own kids, being intentional, just like I heard you say your family modeled for you.
Thank you.
And I have this Lone Ranger mentality, and I think I'm seeing a trend where the guys are being a little more real, being a little authentic, figuring out that we don't have to just bootstrap it and do it all on their own. Man, when you collect
Yeah.
a group of
The
folks that are
pendulum swings.
like-minded.
I find that like the pendulum swings like from all the way over to the toxic masculinity, all the way back over to not being masculine enough. And we're just constantly missing the center area where, yes, it's okay to be masculine and have these traits. And no, it's not okay to always feel like you're going to be needing to do this on your own, or you can't confide in a friend or a loved one over things that are bothering you. There is an
There's that
area.
center, there's that being
Yeah,
authentic.
absolutely. But again, pressures and social media and what we see. I might have a special guest here
But you sure
interrupting.
do. That's awesome.
Speaking of which,
Man, guest appearance.
guest appearance. We're recording a podcast right now. Thanks for coming in. Yeah. Now you're on. Love you. See you in a minute. Yeah, yeah. This is how we close deals in business meetings. I just have the kids sneak in.
So, okay, I got one last question for you, and this is the most important one of all. And we didn't even get to beef jerky, so we'll have to leave that to another topic. But I want to know where your favorite coffee shop is. Okay, favorite coffee shop. I'm going to stack questions on you. Why it's your favorite and what you order.
Yeah, man, I used to get into New York City and get to my office a lot more than I have. Certainly in the winters, I get there even less. One of the goals this year was to make more trips in. One of the things I love about New York City is there's no shortage of coffee shops that you can go.
Man, I could spend all week and all my money
Yeah, yeah.
hitting coffee shops.
You literally can. Like there is no
And I
shortage
would.
of opportunities to check out a shop and what they're doing and find something new. Think one of my favorite places to go is Devotion in Madison Square Park. I know they have a much bigger store or shop in Brooklyn, but they do only Colombian coffee. I'll get a pour over. I think I can appreciate a place that does one thing and they do it very
They're really
well.
well. Yeah.
They gotten really good at, hey, this is the type of coffee we want to brew, and we're really going to just focus on that. It's a beautiful shop on the inside for sure. My favorite local spot no longer exists, unfortunately. It was a place called the Peccary. It was in Millburn, New Jersey. So I want to pay tribute to the memory of the Peccary. And this was a guy who, for a living, designed coffee shops. That was his role.
Talk about a dream job.
Yeah, he designed it. He didn't run them, he didn't operate them.
That's smart.
This was just a passion project. So he opened up in some space in, this New Jersey town, 15 minutes away from me. And you could almost think of it as a giant coffee. It was beautiful inside, but it was a giant laboratory and experiment. The people, you could go, you became friends with the baristas. You go behind the counter. I brought in some beans sometimes. They're like, oh, cool, let's make an affogato out of this. Let's put this one in the siphon. Let's do it, and you just spend an hour or two talking about coffee, trying different things, gadgets that you didn't even have. They, of course, had, all the stuff a traditional coffee shop would. I would even call them up and be like, hey, I'm having trouble brewing, this thing. They introduced me to the roaster that I typically get my subscription from. So a lot of really good memories got me through, the beginning years of moving from the city to the burb. So unfortunately,
that's fun.
Not around anymore. You could always go into the city and hit up any number of amazing coffee shops. And the last thing I'll say is, Joe Coffee Company was kind of my first real foray into a really good cup of coffee. Florida, my home state, unfortunately, better today than ever before, did not really have any kind of coffee culture. Growing up, Florida did not have a coffee culture when I was a kid whatsoever. I think people just go to Starbucks and think, that's where
they've had good coffee.
That's where it's going to be. And otherwise, you're going to a deli and you're getting what's tantamount to diner coffee, which deserves its own special place. And, you're going to do it for nostalgia purposes or like the irony of really terrible diner.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. You're going for the experience, sometimes 100%. Not for the caffeine.
But, it's usually at home. I mean, as much as like going out, I think I've become such a coffee snob that you really need to blow me away in your coffee shop. Otherwise, I'm going to really want what we're making at home.
You're going to be the critic just like I am. My favorite coffee is probably at my house too. And it's not just what I'm having, but who I'm having it with. So
100%. Like my neighbor and I that have learned that we both are just as equal of enthusiasts. And, first thing we do when we go over each other's homes is grab whatever bags we just recently received and shove them in our faces so you can, like, oh, this got some real funky fermentation. Let's make that one right now. Little bean exchange as we're dropping the kids off from school. That's just awesome to mix your love for coffee with your friendship and your neighbor and all of that. That's kind of the next level experience you get to have with coffee. One of the many, many reasons we love it so much.
You and I would be good neighbors and probably drive our wives crazy.
But, I'll say this. They're the biggest benefactor. I don't know if your wife drinks coffee. Yeah. I'm going to assume she does.
She does. She's my biggest too.
Yeah, the greatest recipient of all of this, I believe, are our wives who have us, whack jobs of coffee, constantly perfecting the perfect cup for them to enjoy.
She's going, I don't care about all the blah, blah, blah. I just want you to get it right here. And she enjoys it. I finally
had a teacher, I didn't expect her to make pour overs, although she's perfectly capable of doing it if I trained her. But I think went away for a few days. I'm like, you're going to need to learn how to use the 8-in. And sure enough, she can make the coffee. Now we're going to Miami for a few days without the kids. So I'm sure
is Panther down in Miami? Panther
Florida,
coffee?
The Florida. Oh yes, no, Panther. Yeah. But yes, Panther Coffee is down in Florida, and I had that a few years ago. So just goes to show that there is now a coffee culture down south.
That's fun. I'm heading to Kansas City tomorrow to see a client that's a regional coffee roaster, and so I'll be hitting some shops around Kansas City tomorrow and Thursday as well.
Yeah,
so.
the roastery is out of Kansas City, so good stuff coming out of Kansas City as well. And Oklahoma.
Good coffee culture.
Arkansas, everywhere you turn.
It's who would have thunk it. So, Doug, it's great to have you on here today. And just a reminder, kind of recap, is to just think the long game, just not in your own finances, but in your personal life and the people that you lead, and that's got to start with yourself. So thanks again for today.
Thank
and
you.
Enjoy your time in Miami.
Thanks for having me.
All right. We'll talk to you soon.